Hi, I'm Beth, and I'm here with a summer sewing project brought to you by Northcat. Today we're going green with this reusable grocery bag. It folds and rolls up for perfect portability. We're using the So Sweet line from Northcat today. So we've cut out our template and pieced it together. With a symmetrical pattern like this one, you can fold it in half and then place it on the fold of your fabric, and then you have less cutting to do. We've also pinned the pattern to the fabric with the points facing out. This gives less interference when you're cutting. And then as you're cutting, keep the pattern and the fabric as close to the table as possible. This will help with it not distorting as much. So try not to move it around too much. And on the straight sections, it's always a lot easier to use your rotary cutter. So we've cut out our 4 handle pieces. We have 2 for the outside and 2 for the lining. And we're going to make one of our handle units. So we're taking one of each and laying them with right sides together. And then we're going to sew along the curved outside and inside edges, not the top and the bottom. So we added some pins to hold the pieces together, and we'll sew a 1/4 inch seam on the inside and outside curves. On the curves, you'll want to stop with your needle down and pivot often. Once you've sewn your 2 pieces together, you'll want to clip along the curved edges to make that a little smoother and reduce bulk when you're turning. We found a pinking shears works great for this. Just make sure you don't cut that seam. Once you've clipped all those curves, you can turn it right side out and give it a good press. Now that you have both your handle pieces pressed, you'll open them up at the side, and then you're going to put right sides together and make sure that your exterior is touching your exterior and your lining is touching your lining. And then you'll want to pin at the seam and make sure the seams are going in opposite directions. So that way that will nest those seams a little more. And then you'll want to pin along the edge and do this on both sides. Now we'll sew down each side using a 1/4 inch seam. So we turned the piece right side out and pressed it, and now we're going to French seam the top handles closed. So we have the lining pieces touching, and we'll sew a 1/4 inch seam along the top of one of the handles. We're sewing through a lot of layers here, so it is a good idea to start with a leader strip. Now we'll turn the whole piece lining side out, and then fold over the top of the handle, and then we'll sew a 3/8 inch seam, making sure you catch that entire seam in this second stitching line. Next, we'll make the tie for the bag. So this is a 2 inch by 12 inch strip, and we folded it in half with right sides together, and then we're going to sew along the long edge, leaving the ends open. Now we'll turn the skinny strip right side out. We've attached a safety pin to one end, and that will help us turn it. So pop the head of the pin in, and then scrunch a little bit of fabric, and then kind of work it back down. And just kind of work it as you go. So we've pressed our tie and then folded it in half. Then on each raw edge, you'll tuck under a 1/4 inch and press, and then another 3/4 inches and press. Do that on both sides, and you'll want those both facing up. And then you'll take 1/2 of your hook and loop tape on one side and stitch around it, and then we'll add the other piece to the other side. Because we're sewing on such a small piece, it's a good idea to use your hand wheel just to start the few stitches off and make sure you're in the correct position. Next, take one of your bag body rectangles and put that face up. And then we'll take our tie and align it 11 inches from the left side and pin that in place. And you'll want to make sure your ties are facing the top of your rectangle. And then we'll baste along this edge. So you can use a basting stitch on your machine or just set it for a longer stitch length when you're basting. Now we're taking our other body rectangle and we're layering it with right sides together with the unit that has the ties on the bottom. We'll align all those and then we'll sew along the bottom and sides. So we're sewing with a 1/2 inch seam and we're using a zigzag stitch just for a little extra durability. Next, to give the bag some dimension, we'll box the corners. So you'll take your bottom corner and grab either side and then pull those away from each other. Then you'll line up the seam in the middle. So you just kind of have to feel that and work it down a little bit. And then we'll measure 1.5 inches from the top, and it's a 3-inch line across the bottom of the bag. I'm just going to mark a little dot at 1.5. And then there's our 3-inch width. So we draw a line and then we'll sew across that line. So do this on both corners. Don't forget to switch back to your straight stitch from your zigzag, and we'll just stitch across this line. Now that we've sewn across both corners, we'll trim the excess off, leaving a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And do this on both corners. Now we can turn it right side out. So now we've taken our handle piece and we've placed it over the bag. We're matching the raw edges up. And we've got the exterior of the handle facing the bag and the lining is facing us. We'll match up the side seams and then we'll want to pin all the way around. So this is a good time to take off the accessory case to use your free arm. This will allow you to get the bag easily over your machine. Now we're going to use a 1/2 inch seam, we're going to do a straight stitch, and then we're going to do a zigzag in that seam allowance. Our final step is to add a line of top stitching to hold this seam down. And our reusable bag is complete. What I love about this bag is that you can fold it up and then it rolls up into a tiny little roll that you can secure with the little tie that we added. And then you can tuck this into your purse, throw it in your glove box or in your center console of your car. So tiny, and you can take it wherever you go.